When my father began teaching economics in the 1950s, he was befriended by a humanities professor named Sterling Wheelwright. Professor Wheelwright and his wife Edna adopted our family. We called them Uncle Sterling and Auntie Edna and treasured the fact that we had an uncle and an auntie because, in fact, we had no relatives nearby due to the Holocaust. When my sister was born, they helped my parents find a new home just a few blocks from their own. We spent a lot of time on their bougainvillea frame patio, playing near the little fountain Uncle Sterling had installed. The Wheelwrights shared stories and slides of their trips around the world and were loving present surrogates for family we didn't have. Uncle Sterling and Auntie Edna were musical. There was a huge organ and a piano in their living dining room and also an elaborate system for reel-to-reel recording, which Uncle Sterling liked to do. When she was in her 80s and 90s, Auntie Edna transferred many of these recordings onto audio cassette tapes. Years ago, I received one in the mail. When finally I had time to listen to the tape, it was astonishing. My own 5-year-old voice was responding to Uncle Sterling's gracious questions. He asked how old I was, what my thoughts were on kindergarten, and whether I wanted to recite the 10 Commandments, noting that he'd found out, presumably like Santa Claus finds out stuff, I'd learned them by heart. Next, one hears me reciting the 10 Commandments with a little lisp, but a lot of confidence. The 10 Commandments, so simple, even a child can recite them from memory, but strong enough to last millennia and decisively influence our world. Cecil B. DeMille, director of the eponymous Academy Award-winning film, is credited with observing, "We cannot break the 10 Commandments. We can only break ourselves against them." Exodus 20 begins, and God spoke all these words. It doesn't specifically say 10 commandments, but the words have traditionally been parsed into 10 commandments, and scholars infer the wordier versions are explanatory glosses or elaborations of the original succinct formulations. In other words, the original words carved onto those original stone tablets were very few. Numbers 6, 7, and 8 were 2 words each. As I reread the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, I wondered at the divine editor who distilled these words. How could so few words be needed to explain the most important rules governing our relationships to God, to our family, and to others in the world? There are 613 rules that enumerate how to be a good, observant Jew. Fewer, but still many, how to be a culturally acceptable member of the church. But only 10 clear commandments articulate how to be a faithful follower of Jehovah. What are they? I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images or idols of any sort. Thou shalt not bow down to them or serve them. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And 10, thou shalt not covet. These are the real rules. Learn them. Teach them to your children. Memorize them. Repeat them. They are commandments. They are not suggestions. Ignore them at your peril. Follow them to places of peace. I am grateful my mother took the time to help me memorize them when I was very young. These 10 short lessons for living a happy, healthy, faithful, and faith-filled life. We didn't go to church when I was young, but with these commandments committed to my heart by memory, I was blessed to carry the armor of God with me wherever I went. These rules are tools that would change the world if engraven upon the hearts of men and women everywhere. How much more readily we would understand our blessings and live unselfishly if we loved the Lord with all our hearts and had no other gods before him. How much more focused on the main things of our earthly experience we'd be if we did not bow down to graven images of wealth, physical fitness, power, prestige, popularity, or any sort of personal idol, how much more civil and meaningful our discourse would be if it was not cluttered by profanity, vulgarity, or falsehood. How much more good would come to pass if we didn't talk so much about God, but rather lived in harmony with our Lord's example of kindness, forgiveness, non-judgment, and selfless sacrifice. What a peace would come if all observed a Sabbath day each week, a day apart from the crush and rush of the world, a day set apart for rest, refreshment, receiving inspiration, and offering service rather than labor, commerce, and entertainment. The world would be transformed if we all honored the parents that gave us life and raised us, if there was no murder or theft or lying about others, if husbands and wives could completely trust one another to be faithful, and if we learned to rejoice in what we had rather than lust after what others have. The 10 Commandments can still remake the world. Vive la révolution! Long live that revolution!